Welcome to episode 32 of the Service Course Report. It's May 13th, 2026. Welcome. I'm Ed Philbrick, joined by Kurt and Derin Stockton, and it is Wednesday afternoon on a wet, rainy Giro stage that will go down in history as one of the best. But I would quickly interject that we have a very fond memory of the Giro as that we all share, and that is that the Italian deli had a satellite dish the size of a Volkswagen Bug. I don't know if it was on top of the Italian deli on State Street across from Hendrickson's or it was at their house,
Right.
but they would record the Giro the first year that 7-Eleven rode the Giro,
85.
and we would gather. Is it Yananelli Street? What's the name of the street? Lodi Lane behind Santa Barbara High, at Doug Knox's house, and
Makes sense.
Oh, yeah, over on the
watch the
side.
tapes about one day delayed. And you have to understand that that was remarkable footage in Italian, and we were watching the American team perform, and we would all gather in the room and watch it together. And I think that started my romantic inclination towards how great the Giro is, and it was great this morning.
Yeah, seeing Kiefel win that stage, with Moser just chasing after him at the end. And then, of course, Hampsten. Yeah, they would. I feel like they were maybe even on Betamax, but maybe I have that part of it wrong. So I feel like Betamax was involved at some point, but yeah, like the coveted tape. And I mean, we couldn't get any of that, right? There was no, we would wait for a month for Velo News or 3 months for winning to come out with photos of races that we already knew. So to see that, yeah, the next day was incredible.
Right.
That was
Well,
We're
great.
talking about that. We think it's
Yeah.
difficult. Like you're like, oh, do you watch it on Peacock or do you watch it on Flow or do you watch it on HBO?
I
We're
got
like,
these
well,
damn streaming services.
think what we did when we were in high school.
Yeah, dude, that
Yeah.
was coveted material there to get. That was like a Indiana Jones treasure hunt or something.
And I will say the first time I ever heard an Italian broadcaster call out an American name was when Jeff Bradley crashed and broke his collarbone that first time we plugged in the tape. And it
Hmm.
was probably stage one. And I think, or he was in the break, or I don't know, but like I can remember them going, blah, 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 Jeff Bradley, like,
Right.
You're like, oh,
I don't remember Italian being offered at Santa Barbara High School. It was
I
just
know.
Spanish and French, right?
Yeah, Spanish and French. That's it. Well, yeah,
Wow,
that's
that's a good
a
one,
good
Ed.
memory. Yeah, that was great.
all right.
Giro.
So we've been trying to open our episodes with a question so you can get to know us and we can get you to engage with us. You get to know where we stand on things, and then you can hear us blab on, but you also can chime in and ask questions and give your own personal experience. So, KS, you had a good question to pose to us today to start things off.
Yeah, and this one came from a little bit of a personal experiment, and it's about the high carb trend in cycling. We've been reading about this for a couple years now. First it was 90 carbs an hour, then it was 100 grams of carbs an hour, and now it's 150 or 180 or whatever it is. It's a lot, right? It's completely counterintuitive to stuff we learn. And so I'm like, well, is this high carb trend in cycling, is it science or is it fad? And everything I've read says that it's science. Your gut does need to get adjusted to processing that many carbs, but
Hmm.
it's like running race fuel, right? Yes, you watch a lot of supercross, a lot of motorsports. Like they don't go to the
Right.
corner gas station and fill the cans up to put that fuel in those
Nope.
bikes. And so the athletes that are at the highest level are not using basic food to get through races anymore and to get the performance out. We're seeing these record speeds on ascents, climbs or stages or whatever it is, or these performances. Or riders are like, yeah, they're getting better and better, and there'll be naysayers out there, of course, just because of the history of cycling and all the doping that's gone on. But really, is it science or fad? And then more importantly, have you tried it in any fashion at all? And if so, any results? And we hear about so much of this stuff. We talk about the bikes, do you need an aero gravel bike and aero socks and, blah, this and that? How does it work for the average cyclist? And, granted, we did race at different levels, but I think we're a lot closer to maybe more the average, I put that in quotes, cyclists than, the racers that are the top 0.5% of bike riders in the world. And so it's like, have you tried it at all? And any results? And so I was thinking back to, I don't know, about 6 weeks ago, I did the King Ridge Hopper. And one of the sponsors of that series is Maurten gels. And it's Maurten. But I asked the guy there who's a big trail runner, it's like, how do you pronounce this? Because I do the announcing. He says, oh, it's pronounced Maurten, like the salt. They sponsor the FDJ Suez, FDJ United Suez team of Demi Vollering, and they sponsor the UNOX team. So you got some high-end racers there, and they talk about what all these racers do. But I'm like, so what is this going to do for KS? And so at that hopper, which was kind of an early start, it was cold. Yeah, what's it going to actually do for me? So I gave it a go, and I went on coffee, and I started with one of those gels, and then part of the way.
So no breakfast.
No breakfast.
Coffee and just straight on the octane.
I just don't do too good like with early morning breakfasts.
Oh yeah.
And I was out to ride. I wasn't out to race, so I was like, I can just stop at the feed zone and eat if I get hungry or put a little food in my pocket. I wasn't really concerned about going fast, but I'm like, this guy, and I'm sorry I forgot his name. I'll get it next weekend when I see him again. But I tried it, and I was like, I got to the feed zone at mile almost 50. And I felt great. I grabbed like some trail mix or something there because my mind always says, oh, real food's better than this manufactured food. And I think I had a second one of those gels and got all the way through. And the thing was, as I got done with the whole thing, I don't know, I rode maybe, it's like about 100K, a little over, 65 miles maybe. And I felt better than I thought I should. And I felt good riding the entire time. So then I just kind of forgot about it. And then this goes to something I want to talk about further on in the podcast is I subscribe to a couple print magazines. One of them, Rouleur out of the UK, and another one, Fausto, from the crew that brought us Peloton magazine. And Fausto's their latest iteration that's in about a year from the US. And Rouleur, that's this big print. And that episode's sitting over on the table. I was reading it, and they do a lot of what I call advertorials, where they've got paid content collaborations with brands, which is, it's paid advertising, but instead of seeing a spread of a couple pages of pictures, they do this stuff. And I read something on those Maurten gels, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try this again. So the other morning, 2 days ago, yesterday morning, actually, it was Tuesday morning, I took the morning class. And Robin and I switched back and forth Tuesday, Thursday mornings, teaching and or riding each other's class at 7 a.m. So it's kind of that's a get up, have a shot of espresso and go type of effort at that time in the morning. And I'm like, I'm going to do that, but I'm going to also have one of these gels at about, 20 to 30 minutes before we start and just see how I feel. And lo and behold, I felt freaking amazing in that class. Like I was pedaling and my legs, the old saying, you're pedaling and it feels like you don't have a chain on your bike, like you're just going around. Well, I was when we were supposed to be in zone 1, I was in zone 3 and feeling like I was in zone 1, and I was literally 2 zones almost above the entire class. Rode longer, had higher power numbers than I ever had. So now I'm thinking I got to try this a couple more times. I'm going to try it tomorrow morning to get rid of that placebo effect. But I was like, wow, that actually, it seemed to work. So that's my take on it. I'm curious, what you guys have on that. And I'm curious what our readers, our listeners have on that. So
what about you, Ed? Excuse me.
Well, I would set the stage by, we come from the generation where we barely had enough water and we would stop for Mountain Dew and we would time how long you were in the store. And like the last guy out of the store would get, knuckles. And, maybe we ate a banana. So I think I was chronically dehydrated, and then if I took something in, it involved caffeine, which could dehydrate you more. And then we ate a banana, and I had gray hair when I was 19, and Kurt's always reminded me that I was due to have gray hair no matter what. But I really feel like my system was abused growing up from lack of proper nutrition. And,
Yeah.
even at home with my meals and out training and racing and so forth. So, we come from a generation that just didn't have sports science and sports nutrition, and I have embraced it. I definitely take in more carbs now while I'm riding. It helps me eat less when I get home,
Mhm.
which is, a big important factor for me. I also eat some strange stuff while I'm riding now, sometimes beef jerky. I never consumed coffee. I used to think about, I remember reading the Sports Illustrated article about Le Mans stopping for Coke and McDonald's when he was training for the tour. And I always thought that is the strangest thing, you know, but he wasn't, I mean, the McDonald's part, but he wasn't wrong to stop and eat while he was training,
Right.
for the high mountains and stuff, because those were long, hard rides as he was preparing for the tour. So I've tried to do that. The last thing I'll add is that, Sagebrush was an important race for me, and when we went out and did the pre-ride, I just ran out of gas and fuel, so I knew that I was under fueled that day. And one of the old timers that had been working on the trail for Victor and old time mountain bikers, oh, that's a big day, bro. You got to bring a sandwich for that ride, you know. And he
Not
wasn't,
gel stuff.
not gels, and
Yeah, you
so
need hearty food.
I used Best Bike Split to prepare for that event, which is like this paid service where you load in your time, and I asked it, how to fuel and how many gels I would need, and for the expected output. And so I did it on race day, and it was way better.
Hmm.
So I would say I'm experimenting with how to do it on race day, and it's a lot of calories to take in. It's a lot of gels, unfortunately. I even stuff a gel now in for the 50-minute quick and dirty because, I just never know. I
Yeah.
probably should maybe even take one then. So yes, I'm testing it more. I believe in it. It is a little bit of a fad, but I'm intrigued, and I definitely feel it.
Interesting. What gels are you using?
Well, here lies something interesting. I like those real simple maple syrup ones that aren't a lot of calories and not a lot of amino acids and sodium, and you know what I mean? They're just maple syrup.
The untapped
Um,
ones?
yeah.
Yeah.
It- but that's probably, Maurten, it kind of wigs me out just a little bit. They're a little, I don't know how to explain it, but
The
and
texture?
SI, yeah, and
Yeah.
SIS kind of wig me out too. Some of those are huge. I'm trying to remember the sponsor of BWR. There's another brand, and these big freaking gel things are huge. You know what I mean? They're heavy, and I just kind of like the simple maple syrup ones,
Yeah.
especially when I'm training. Um, but I'm probably not getting, and what I've been wearing that H drops hydration monitor, and it's clear that I'm a heavy sweater and that I'm losing a lot of sodium.
Mhm.
And so I need to be getting that in my gels. And so I think, my selection there, I need to make peace with some of these other big brands and larger gels. So,
How'd you do it?
And I'd definitely say I can relate what you're saying about like the different textures because some of the gels are more like syrups, but more like a thick syrup, like corn syrup. If you ever get corn syrup in a bottle from the store, like that you make pecan pie with, or molasses. Molasses not in the wintertime, but it is that versus say maple syrup, which you're talking about, it's a little bit runnier. And then you get some of these gels, which is they're more like a proper gel, but they can almost be like Jello or like a boba tea, but kind of thick,
Oh, really
thick
super
boba tea.
thick.
Yeah, kind of thick.
Boba.
So you know what I'm
That'd be
talking
nice.
about? Yeah,
Boba pearls that give you
bro,
energy.
you can feel the fish eggs going down. You feel like you're out fishing and you're just like eating fish eggs.
Look,
yeah.
look, look.
So
Oh,
you're not big for tapioca pudding then, huh?
no.
No.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, I like
Yeah,
some
it's somewhere
tapioca.
there, DS. Anyway,
Yeah,
I can relate to that. Fortunately, it doesn't bother me.
yeah.
And what about you,
Well,
DS?
I can tell you that I actually haven't tried it at all. I think I maybe don't ride long enough. or long enough and hard enough, or maybe I just haven't tapped into it. But I don't know, from over the years of just trying and eating different stuff for probably like the last decade, I would say 90% of my ride food have just been Lara bars. I found that the simpler food is really easy. Those are usually just a few ingredients and they're all just like fruit and nuts, which I seem to do pretty well with. Other than peanuts, I've never been a peanut fan, so I don't do peanuts. But I found some of the other bars, like when I was eating bars, would give me like burps and stuff. Maybe they were just a bit harder and more congealed, like Cliff bars, or what were the Cliff Minis, I think. The organic ones that are like the kids, the Z bars, those are popular with eating right because it was like a little bit smaller, you could eat it. But I found that those would give me burps and they seemed like they required a lot of water. So I
Sugar
haven't,
ones.
if I probably was more into competing or feeling like I needed that edge, maybe I would consider it. But I'm just like eggs, two corn tortillas, chicken, and avocado for breakfast. And I can usually go about 4 hours before I need to eat, or maybe I eat a bar inside of 4 hours and feel like my energy is pretty consistent. But I've also, through my diet, I mean, for a long time, I don't really eat much in the way of like, I get my carbs from vegetables. Mostly I don't eat like a rice or a lot of bread or anything like that. And so your body, learns to burn fat first as a fuel. Um, but again, maybe I don't go intense enough or hard enough that I would need, to throw the carb on top of that. But for me, I'm kind of on the opposite approach, real food for breakfast. And it's weird, Cass, you were talking about how it's hard to eat breakfast. I mean, like when I ride, I can wake up and eat my egg tacos, and I'll eat them a lot of times. I'll make them and throw them in Tupperware if I'm driving to ride, if I'm eating Jonah or something, or like literally eat them and go hop on my bike and just start riding 10 minutes later. It doesn't seem to bug me. Obviously, I can't like, wind it out, but also I just don't think I can in general. I need a little bit longer to warm up, definitely than I used to. So, yeah, so I haven't done it at all.
Yeah, it's interesting with the breakfast thing. I mean, whether I'm going out to like work out or just like starting my day,
Hmm.
you know, hanging out, having a coffee, watching the Giro, and then go to the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
farmer's market. But I still like, I don't eat, feel like either of those days. But sometimes I used to be able, for decades, I could do like you eat like a full, toast, juice, milk, and Cheerios, right? Couple eggs, to your thing, breakfast tacos, whatever, and go and ride. And I feel like I can't do that as much. And
Yeah.
this was just kind of an experiment, because I was the same. Like I could eat and go ride for 4 hours, and maybe I'd take a little something with me just in case. But I felt like I burned pretty steady constantly through. But maybe that works just, I think, to your point, for riding, just pretty steady all the way through and not having, you know, doing either little bursts of higher output stuff.
Right.
I mean, I never rode with power till I started teaching indoor classes on these stages bikes, and so that's like total science. That's not like,
Right.
go by how you feel. You still want to, be able to go by how you feel. Um, we're not racing, but it's really kind of interesting for me to do it. You know, maybe we'll have to start a section called "Can you teach an old dog new tricks?" The service course report. But
Yeah.
The other,
I'm gonna keep trying it. That's my
Yeah.
thing. I'm gonna try it with these classes. I'm gonna try it outdoor riding more, and actually take some notes and see
Yeah.
see how it goes.
the other thing I would add is that I have not experimented with too much carb in my bottle. Like I just use
Mm.
scratch hydration, which is, I think it's 80 calories per bottle. And so it's not really high carb, right?
Right.
A lot of these racers are taking liquid carbs in their bottle and then just a few gels.
Right. It's
So I,
easier
I
to.
have to I have
Yeah.
to experiment a little more with liquid carb. The other thing that you guys just brought up is I th-
Sorry
I
about that,
think
people.
I think all of us would race, 50, 60 times a year, and there was a lot of meals and a lot of turning around and racing after those meals. And so we were good at that, right?
Right.
And we
Yeah,
also
you had
a
to.
lot of a lot of races started late, and you knew that a race was going to start late. So you had to feel yourself pretty close. This whole like don't eat 3 hours, 4 hours before you race,
Oh,
two
right.
hours before you. that didn't really work in our world when you're racing 50 times a year or something. So our guts got trained pretty good at, eating and then racing right off the gun, So
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. 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 Another benefit, side benefit of the cycling years. Throw it in and go.
And not throw up.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Well, I'll be interested to just see your guys' approach. I was just thinking, like, dude, that's just a lot of gels to manage. Like if you're
It
doing
is.
long rides, like you've got to have like
it
six
is.
gels every ride or something.
Well,
Jonah,
that's
Well,
yeah,
and all
Jonah
these
did.
pre-ride
Sorry.
videos that you
Yeah.
see of the athletes getting ready, they're all like taking like an hour before they go to bed and laying out their fuel. It's like they lay
Yeah.
it out and then they got to get it to the feeder and they're taping the gels to the bottles and it's
Yeah.
crazy. It's all math.
But it was interesting. I'll talk a little bit later in the Positive Pete about that OCR event I crewed for Joan, and it was interesting to see the combination of food and what he set out with and what he ended up using, how it ended up working, because he did have a really good day. But we'll talk about that a little bit more because I want to talk about the event in its entirety.
S
All right.
Anybody have any free laps from the last couple weeks?
Yeah, I have to take a free lap on not being able to remember last episode the direction that radial tire plies went because a bias ply is at 45. And was mixed up because I remember when I first thought about radial tires, I thought that they actually went in the direction the plies of travel, but actually it's 90 degrees, which is why I wasn't sure. But so uh, the casing that they use, it actually goes 90 degrees to the direction of travel is how they make those radial tires to get the casing to be so compliant. And so when they overlay the two at 45, that's about as stiff as they can get. Yeah, and Schwalbe and a couple other brands, they say they're not exactly at 90. They're at like 9 degrees or 7 degrees. They're kind of coy about their actual degrees, exactly how they're doing it.
Of course.
But it's not exactly 90. But a radial, tire would be at 90
Yeah, no idea.
to direction of travel. So that's my free lap.
So is that why we call them radial tires in cars? Like, did you have
Yes.
radials in there?
Yeah, yeah, that was a technology that that developed however long ago. Remember? Yeah, where kids, dude, you got radial tires? No way.
And I don't think anyone even talks about radial tires on cars anymore because they
They're
all
all.
are, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep.
All right.
All right. Well, anybody do any interesting rides in the last week?
Yeah.
Yeah,
KS.
I did. I did the service course. I rode all the bikes.
Oh, yeah.
So I
Nice.
did. I did 4 days
Four,
in a
man.
row last weekend. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. I went mountain biking on Saturday. They had the
Oh,
Bikeapalooza
yeah.
up here. So
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
I spoke about it last time. I was going to
It's
go demo that Levo R
mhm.
again. I thought Specialized was just doing some demos. Well, lo and behold, there was a whole event. Specialized, Pivot, Norco,
Oh,
Bianchi. Those ones I remember. SRAM and Shimano. We've got two guys that live locally that are the field guys for those brands up here. Food trucks, shave ice, like the whole thing. I mean, we have a really cool trail network up here. So I did the mountain bike on Saturday, went out and rode my gravel bike on Sunday, went and rode my road bike on Monday, and I rode indoor bikes on Tuesday 2 times. So as we say, ride all the bikes. Didn't ride a beach cruiser, didn't ride a BMXer, didn't ride a Brompton, after the Brompton Worlds at Sea Otter.
the
But I felt
Brompton
like I
World.
was I was doing it, so that was pretty cool. It was fun to ride all those different platforms. And when I was teaching yesterday evening, I told all the members there at the gym that were in class about that. And this one lady, she says, well, she goes, did you have a favorite? Do you have one you like? And I said, yes. I said, anytime I'm out riding outside, that's the bike I like. I said, as much as I
That's
like
so.
teaching these classes for you all, I said, outside is just so freeing. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was awesome. And I can't believe I've been missing those mountain bike trails for all these years. I mean, I went and rode like there were some good riders there. I mean, I'm 2 doors down from the bike shop here. They were closed and they took their whole staff up there.
Oh,
Like they had the
really?
bike shop closed that day. Yeah, and then this guy Colton Peterson, who raced for Maxxis Factory Racing. He won the TDS Enduro up here. He's won the Big Mountain
Mhm.
Enduro Series overall. Colton was there, was one of the ride leaders, and I went and rode with those guys. And I mean, these were trails like that would have been downhill races for us back in the day,
Yeah.
right? But luckily, that's I said, can you either roll or go around all the jumps? And they said
Right.
yes. So I just went and I rode with we're going down the trails, and I'm going down the trails, and there's these couple of kids I'm riding with. They're manualing and yelling at each other and airing out the jumps, and it reminded of us when we were kids. But
Yeah.
that was it was a lot of fun, and I was super stoked when that was all done. And I was like, I mean, those trails, they're 5 miles up the road from here. I can imagine. I mean, it's 5 miles uphill. It's about 1,500 feet up, but I can imagine, boy, if I had one of those e-bikes all dialed in,
Oh, yeah, dude,
I'd ride up there and do laps and come down. So, yeah, I got some other two-wheeled vehicles to get rid of here, but yeah, you never know. I figure
Master plan is working.
if I wait another month, there'll be more tech coming in. So, yeah,
Well,
that
the
was
price
fun.
will drop. The price will drop.
Yeah,
Dude,
yeah.
talk about all
A
the
little
price
disruption.
drops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was great.
Got-
And then yeah. And I felt good riding each day too. Rode my gravel bike by myself because my buddy Chris is over in China. I was at the Shanghai Bike Show, I guess, and doing stuff. And yeah, I was able to push. And yeah, it was great on my gravel ride. So DS, we did a ride when you were up here maybe last summer. There was a super steep descent that's like
Mhm.
you're almost stopped going down the whole thing, that little connector, and I caught my front wheel, and I tumbled
Oh, yeah.
twice. Remember, my bike went 4 times,
Yeah.
and I was covered with dirt. So I went down that descent. I mean, this is where you've got the saddle on your belly because you're off the back of the bike on the gravel bike going down, picking your way down. And I'm like, we had rain earlier in the week, so it was perfect. Like the wheels weren't sliding out. And I
Nice.
see these skid marks in front of me. I'm like, that looks like someone's been down here really recently. And as I'm getting to the bottom, I see off to the left a dude on a mountain bike by himself. I'm like, oh, cool. So I actually cleaned it, which I was pretty stoked. I rode up and I come up on this guy, and I have a bell on my bike. So I rang the bell, and it was great. He started reaching for his phone. People do that so often. I ding the bell, and they think it's their phone giving them alerts.
Yeah.
Dude said he was 73 years old out riding on his mountain bike. So
There you go.
that was like that was that kind of, I don't know which made my day more. And I rode with him for probably a mile. We wrapped, and I explained how to go here and there. And anyway, that's my long ramble of my rides in the past week or so. So I'll stop and pass the baton.
That's good. My rides have all, last week was all gravel biking. I got out for a couple during the week, and then another one on Sunday I did, which again we'll talk about a little bit later. I crewed for Jonah at that OCR event on Saturday, and so that would have been my normal day. And then, Sunday, like I said, I just end up gravel biking. We had some tire testing to do, and so those were my rides. We've had pretty good fog around here, so it's actually really nice to get out in the mornings. It gives me a different feel of dirt. Like some days I can even ride in the morning and it's moist and damp, and then once the sun comes out, I can head back out on the bluffs in the afternoons and get to feel tires, in two slightly varying conditions. So it's been fun after riding my e-mountain bike a bunch, in and around Sea Otter, and then getting back on my gravel bike has been a blast. So it's been really good.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, so those are my rides.
I did the Dirty Mouseketeers ride, which is sort of a why so serious type scenario. It was Lost Abbey's 30th anniversary. Lost
Dirty
Abbey is
Mouse.
a long-standing supporter of cycling in San Diego. The longest original sponsor of BWR.
Lost Abbey Brewing,
Correct.
for those that don't know North County.
Yeah. So they hosted a ride, and it included unlocking the brewery or the tasting room over here by my house. So we rode Double Peak and ended up there. I had a coffee out front. My friends Tidewell Coffee have started a pop-up coffee shop in front of Lost
pop-up.
Abbey.
Nice.
Yeah. So I stopped in and had a coffee, and we hung out, and it was just a good ride because there was plenty of carbs. and that wasn't depleted afterwards. And so it was a good ride. It's fun. Also, just sometimes a little less, more social rides are good entertainment. So uh, yeah,
Yeah, that is fun.
Nice. Yeah, you've got a good crew of people down there. I
yeah,
remember
Well,
from being down there, so
when
it's
you go
great.
on sorry, go ahead, Cass.
I said it's great when you can get out with your crew on a regular basis. It makes it a
yeah.
lot more enjoyable.
Yeah, and the beauty of the social ride is that you get to talk to people. You know what I mean? I don't know. Just it's just ups the fun factor usually. Because, the fact that you're social means you're riding more together than everybody worry about hammering up a hill or doing whatever. You might get to know somebody a little more, laugh at your friend sliding around a corner or something like that rather than, just having your nose in the wind. So the social rides are good. Stop, take a few photos, get some food.
Yeah.
Well, there's also something that goes on in cycling. We've touched on it before, but remarkably intelligent people ride bicycles because they need to. The act of cycling relaxes them. They are highly intelligent. I spent 25 years surfing, and did not have quite so intelligent conversations on a comparable basis in the parking lot after you're surfing. So,
Mhm.
not to knock surfers, they're a different breed, but cyclists
Right.
are incredibly intelligent individuals. And so, if you get a chance to connect with somebody while you're not like 180 heartbeat and talk
Right.
with them, it's always a pretty informative conversation. I mean, on that particular rest stop, I talked to a scientist, a doctor, a retired contractor, somebody from out of town.
Yeah.
What I mean? That's
Yeah,
like
yeah. You wouldn't know
interesting.
unless you actually talk to them, right?
Yeah.
And the bartender is my friend who had lost cyclery for a little while because he started as a bartender at Lost Abbey. He had lost cyclery for a while. He's kind of closed that down and passed it on to a friend. He still does some bike work on the side, but he's retraining himself to be an architect by being an apprentice for his dad, who has MS. So his dad can no longer work long hours, so his son is an apprentice. So he was the bartender, you know.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
that kind of stuff doesn't always happen when you're hammering and trying to pulverize each other. Is having those interactions is important.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
It's good to work
Yeah.
that part of the brain.
I was
Yeah.
thinking maybe the very first version of our social rides was when we used to ride for our easy rides downtown and get a sandwich at the same Italian deli, and then whip out the Santa Barbara Independent with Rick Pepper, and he would go through the personal ads. Remember, that was like the first paper that had the personal, this person looking for that person. We would sit there like, very, very whatever, Mediterranean, sitting out on our little tables and chairs with the magazine,
Right.
copy of the Independent. That was maybe our first social ride. Although I would argue that some of our mountain biking, even though it was only social, obviously among us, it felt a bit more social. We used to mountain bike and just go and hang out and, play bumper bikes and do all that rather than we couldn't even count watts back then. We didn't even know that metric. Yeah.
Well, our first epic, the day we got those specialized stump jumpers, we rode with Terry Gerhard up and over down to um, Paradise. We swam, and
Right.
then there were some sandwiches and fanny packs because that was a long ride.
Right.
And then
Right.
back up and over. I think that was 9,000 feet of climbing or something crazy. So that was
I
our
remember
first big mountain bike ride.
stopping at the one going up the climb, and I was trying to think about it. It had to have been Angostura that we were coming up, backside of tunnel and coming up, and there was that one area where there would be water running, and luckily there was water running, and I was like, put my bottle on there, had a packet of Prips probably left over from the OTC, stuck that in there. I can still remember that and thinking like, oh my God, this tastes so good. Bring you back from the dead, just a bunch of sugary lemon goop in there.
Carbs,
Yeah,
Yeah.
carbs.
there you
Yeah.
go.
Well, I guess we knew it back
Yeah,
then, huh?
ride all the carbs, eat all the
Right.
carbs.
Eat all the carbs, ride all the bikes.
Yeah, those rides were amazing. I mean, think about like I laugh sometimes. Now, Tunnel is way more beat up than it was after all the downhill years, but that was like we would do that ride over and then up and then ride down Tunnel on our hardtails, those old stump jumpers. I mean, that just like making it down, if you could actually ride the trail was just impressive on those bikes. That was so much fun. You know, it's just a reminder, like whatever bike you have, you can have fun riding it to its capability. Yeah.
And then years later, we took Zeke Johnson, young
Yeah.
mechanic in the bike shop. We took him on that equivalent ride, and we told him we're going to put hair on your chest. Like
That's right. I forgot about that. He was hurting, wasn't he?
It
Like
was really,
hurting
really
way
cold.
bad. Yeah, like we're coaxing him through not coming unglued or whatever as you climb back up. Those rides you do that in those first times. You're just out on the mountain bike so long, and then you're climbing up Angostura, and there's so many false corners where you're like, oh, that looks like the top, and then you just come around, and you're just like, oh my God, you see it like going like three more, wraps around the mountain on its way up. That's right. That's a good memory on that one. The Iron Sheik.
yeah, somewhere there's pictures. I'll find them. All right, so we had lots of bike racing this week.
Oh yeah,
KS, I did not watch La Vuelta Femenina,
nor did I.
but
I
you got to
I
tell me about
finally
it.
did. Yeah. So last episode, I hadn't watched any of those early stages. None of us had, so didn't even want to attempt to talk to it. But it was so the first Grand Tour of the year for the women, La Vuelta. It's the last one for the men after the tour, and it was I got to say wow, like in all caps. It was the best racing down till the last seconds on the last day that I've seen in a Grand Tour. I mean, maybe think back to that first tour that Pogačar won, on the second to last day in the time trial where he beat Roglic. But this was on par with that. I think there was I think they might have had a different leader every day in the
Oh,
race,
really?
which was impressive. So different teams, sprints, and riders really going for it in the breakaways. We talked about it before, how the racing has become more dynamic on the women's side, and I think I had mentioned, kudos to the directors that are directing the riders to go for it more and take these chances, because you gotta try to win if you're going to win. And I think I had mentioned the UAE ADQ team. They had been like knocking at the door, it seems like, all season. And so it really came down to the last 2 days, so it was
Mhm.
this past Saturday and Sunday. Sunday being the Angliru, the iconic
Oh,
climb of the
nice.
Vuelta. That's like, it's almost 14 kilometers, with pitches up in the mid
Yeah.
20% grade. And so the day before, on the Saturday, they had a climb that had equally steep pitches, but it was only about 4Ks long. And Anna van der Breggen, who was like probably the
Right.
winningest female cyclist in the modern era, multi-time world champion, Olympic champion. I mean, she's basically had won everything, and then retired. It was about 5 years ago, I think. Became a director for 3 years for SD Works, and then made her comeback last year. So she took the leader's jersey off of her teammate Lotte Kopecky on that Saturday. Kopecky, admittedly, like, she's like, I have no chance of keeping the lead. She was riding as a domestique. So Van der Breggen just rode from the front and basically dropped everybody. But if you remember, after Amstel Gold, we talked about Paula Blasi, Spanish rider for UAE, who soloed at Amstel Gold. She went
Mm.
for it and stayed away and beat Nieuwe Domofini and Vollering. And so Van der Breggen went, and she just was going and dropped everybody, and she dropped Blasi, and then it was like Blasi would come back and get close, and then it would open up and back and forth and back and forth. And at the end, it was maybe 15 seconds between the two of them.
Mhm.
And then also really exciting, young French rider Marion Bunel took the young rider's jersey and was in third. So we go boom, and the weather was horrendous that day. I mean, it was raining so hard, and hail, and just like, where you get the waters coming down the roads, and they get those climbs in Spain when they get really steep and they get narrower and narrow. It's almost like a little goat path or something. The sun kind of broke out right toward the end of that stage, so they finished up there. Boom. It's like, oh, Van der Breggen is back, on his back. She's doing her thing. She looked really good. It was interesting listening to her interview. The one thing I took away is she's like, I don't think I've ever seen a climb like that. She goes, it was gnarly. I mean, she had rode with so that team rides SRAM. She rode with their Explorer gravel setup with a 46.2 top cog in the back. And they were still standing up on some pitches going up that. I don't know what her chain ring was, but I mean, think about that. A 46 cog, right? We were thinking about
That's what I got on the back of my gravel bike.
Yeah, the back of
And
your
I'm
gravel
old
bike,
and
right.
far from being a pro.
Yeah. And this is the top riders in the world. So fast forward to Sunday, Van der Breggen is in red. It's almost like foregone conclusion. She's going to, win this thing. And they get to the Angleroo, and this Swiss rider from the American team, Human Powered Health, tiny woman, just full light climber. She just starts going and going, and it keeps getting thinned out, and it gets thinned out. And, it's interesting. And Van der Breggen was kind of at the back, and then she gets up to the front. And then people keep getting spit out the back. And then I can't remember. I think it was Bunel that went, and Van der Breggen just got dropped. Like, she got dropped, and Paula Blasi is there. She's just riding and riding. And it's one of the steep pitches. She goes away, as Van der Breggen's getting dropped. And it's like, I think the gap, I don't know what the gap was, 14 seconds, I think, or 16 seconds was the difference between first and second. And that almost opened up immediately to that gap. And it started growing. And it started growing. Blasi takes off, and she catches everybody, and she's leading. And you're like, oh my God. And she's Spanish, right? She started last year on their development team, the UAE team. They brought her up last May to the World Tour team. She's really been racing bikes. A couple years, came from triathlon, and she's going, and she just looks so composed and climbing. And she's leading the race. You're like, is she going to take this stage and win this thing overall? And then the Swiss woman starts coming back on her, catches her inside of like 2Ks, ends up dropping her, takes the stage, but Blasi hangs on for second and wins the thing overall. So she took the red jersey in her home tour on the last day, and it was just like this nail biting thing. You're at the finish. And it was just phenomenal. Like, you didn't know what was going to happen. They were throwing punches at each other the whole time. And it was, I mean, and the woman that won the stage, and Sylvia, I think her name was, I'm blanking on her name. She was equally as excited about winning the stage as, Blasi was of winning this tour. And it was kind of like this cool kind of changing of the guard, PFP, Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, she was there. Cassie Niwe-Doma Finney was there. They both got dropped on that last climb, and these riders rode away. And so if you haven't watched it, like
We'll go back and watch it. Is it on Peacock? Is it an ASO event?
It was on Peacock.
Right.
So
It's
I watched
the Vuelta.
and I actually watched the stages. I didn't watch the highlights. I fast forwarded through because you knew it was really going to come down to the climb. But if you get to those climbs, and you want to watch a little bit far ahead to see how it slowly plays out. But I mean, the racing is, that racing was excited. When we talked last episode, was it getting boring in the men's side with Pogačar winning everything? Well, watch the women's racing, because it was nail biter. I actually was up past my bedtime last night, catching every last bit of it and watching the interviews. I mean, the whole thing. So
Sweet.
Yeah, it was great. So boom.
Wow.
That sounds good. Yeah.
I will catch myself up.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got to grab it.
Highly recommend. What else?
So
we got a Giro going, right? A little Italian racing for the men.
Dude, it's been so good already.
Yeah.
It's so spicy, just the terrain, the stages, how they run it and everything. And it's just so designed to, it produces exciting racing, no boring going on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess it started since our last episode, right? We started.
Yeah, started the next
in Bulgaria.
day, I think. Maybe that day. Yeah. Yeah, the sprint.
Yeah, Bulgaria was spectacular, but it's nice. It just kicks into another gear when it arrives in Italy. There's just
Yeah.
something about the
Yeah.
race when it comes back to Italy that the scenery is amazing on your TV, but the racing is better and the passion is pretty high. So
Well, the crowds in Bulgaria were pretty spectacular. I mean, they said there was, I think that in Sofia, the capital, they had
yeah,
250,000 people there just
Oh,
at the
really?
finish of one of those stages. Oh yeah, it was like nothing you know. And you see these huge crowds, but it just people packed in the town center. Um, I mean, my take is that they, I mean, these countries, these towns, they do this as a way to promote the area for tourism, really. And my takeaway is Bulgaria is beautiful there on the Black Sea. It's like I want to go.
yeah,
Racing
Check it out.
aside, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's nice to
What?
see some. I just like seeing the Grand Tour sprint stages. They're always
Yeah,
so exciting. I feel like Italy's maybe just has a bit more emphasis. I know the sprint stages are big in the Tour, but I feel like there's just a lot more sprinters at the Tour of Italy, you know?
yeah.
And so they just always, I mean, it's always sucks to see the crashes and the run-ins. The one I can't remember if that was that the first stage or the second stage? Or there was that big crash like into the lead in, and so only like 20 guys sprinted out. But it's been fun to watch the stage. I think it was the second stage where Paul Magnier, if that's the correct pronunciation, won it, and the Rockets got to the front there, and we're trying to set it up, and Groenewegen tried coming around at the end, and on the cobbles, that one I think it was right. And
That
I'm
was
blanking on the
stage
Trek
stage
guy. Is
three.
that three? Yeah.
Yeah, he won stage one
He
and
won,
stage
yeah,
three.
yeah, in
Yeah,
stage three. Yeah, I
yeah.
saw stage one, stage three coming up on the cobbles, and it's just been some exciting racing. You know, fun to watch. See the different sprinters in there going at it.
Well, and it continues on our theme of this renaissance of French cycling too, right? When we
Yeah,
talking, everyone's talking about Paul Seixas and the GC and Romain Gregoire and Cosnefroy, but we do have that Dorian Godon and Paul Meunier. I mean, in the Maglia Ciclamina, won two stages, had the leader's jersey. Yeah, it's super exciting.
yeah.
And a nail biter today. You guys watch the stage today?
Did you
Stage,
get
so
to
I
see it,
we're in
Ed?
did.
stage five. Did you watch it, Ed?
I did. I was watching it, and then I had an 8 o'clock meeting, so it was a long stage, so it was running long. So
Oh yeah,
you texted during my meeting, and I came out, and I was like, sat in my car, and I watched. I backed it up perfectly, and I hadn't looked at any socials, and so then I watched it, in perfection and in its entirety, and it was amazing. And I need to see the earlier crash of those two guys because they both crashed, right? Earlier in the day, or the UAE guy.
I know the
Um,
UAE guy. I'm going to blank on his name. He had that one crash in the finale, but I didn't get to watch it all the way. KSU said watch it from 10K to go, so that's about where I went. I was watching it earlier, same thing, and then I had a client, and then I flipped it back in. That's always a risk when it's still live, and then you hit go live because it's going to show the guy that's on the podium. So I do the one where you're like just covering your eyes so you can see just like the corner, and then quick hit the rewind.
I haven't tried that.
You know?
Yeah,
Oh
that
yeah,
sounds.
you just like that, and then just move the slider back and hope you get to like 10K to go. And it actually came in right when the UAE rider had crashed there at the end. Like whatever that was,
when he
10K
went
to
through the
go.
caution tape, they were clearly struggling on the descent.
Yeah,
That was the slowest descent that we'd seen in a while. And I kept thinking about the rumor is that UAE is on time trial tires even in the rain. And so I was like, oh man, and then
yeah.
sure enough, he botches the turn into the caution tape. And then I just knew he was going to catch him back. I was
Oh
listening
yeah, after he
to,
went off to the side, that one.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
how
in the
about
And
caution
how about
they,
tape.
when he was rolling that huge gear up over the overpass and his rear end kicked out sideways too? Did you
well, the
see that?
TT
With
tires let him
yeah,
down. Yeah.
that was.
I
Yeah.
don't,
Hopefully, we're not spoiling it for anybody, but if you haven't watched that stage,
Hey, it's just, yeah, I mean, it was
it's
incredible. So the
amazing.
guys, they're off in the two-up break. The other guy's racing for the jersey. He crashes once, chases back on, catches him, and they're going around. If the Bahrain guy who was leading actually would have tried to purposely do that to get him to go off course. The second incident where he went into the tape, he couldn't have done it better. You know what I mean? Because the guy was on the outside, and at the last minute he sees it, he's like, and it was kind of wise for the UAE guy not to try and break or turn because there was no way he could have done it. But yeah, and it was just like watching the slow grind up the line. You're like, is he gonna get him or not? Which he did.
Well, Arietta is the name of the
Yes,
UAE
Arietta.
guy, and his dad was a famous racer from
Oh yeah.
Spain. And Elalio is the Portuguese guy who now has the pink jersey and may defend it for close to a week. But I will point out, I do believe he crashed, and so he may be a little more banged up than we. It would be interesting to
leader?
see how he does. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
Crashed
yeah, he
earlier
might
in the
not.
stage,
I believe so. Yeah, but
in
that I
addition to
need
his
to
crash in the finale.
Yeah. So, he's got a pretty substantial lead, and Blockhouse is coming up. I think that's Friday. That's the big, climb that should blow up the race and reorganize everything. But,
Well, on Friday, so he can hold it until then.
yeah. Well, and, Jonas is 6 minutes back, 6:22. Pellizotti is 6:18 back. So, he might have the pink
That's a
jersey for 4 or 5 days.
And they're
Yeah,
saying
yeah,
he's
yeah.
actually
Hold on.
he's more of a pure climber type too. Like that's his forte is being a climber.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was interesting watching the TNT coverage because they've got Sean Kelly on there, and they started talking about Acacio da Silva, who was one of the most decorated Portuguese racers back, when we were racing in the
Yeah.
90s. And that, yeah. So that was kind of fun to listen to that. That if you get that, I mean, I guess that's the HBO footage here, which I didn't even realize I had until I went and looked, and I do have it. So check out the Giro.
Yeah.
It's equally as
Yeah.
exciting. Well, at the stages so far, but that women's Vuelta. So then I didn't even mention it back then, but so now the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift was won by a French rider, Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, last year. Spanish Tour won by a Spanish rider. So we are getting these home riders winning their home tours. It's just not in the men's world tour, in the women's world tour. So that's
Yeah.
where it's at, people. So you got to go watch it.
Got to get it.
Yeah.
Got to get that coverage.
Yeah.
Well, talking about the Eurosport coverage that we're getting on HBO Max in the United States, it's nice when Sean Kelly goes on break, we get Neil Stevens or whatever his name is. What's the British guy?
Sean Kelly.
Matt Stevens.
So Matt Stevens, yeah, Matt Stevens, and I forget the other guy. So the commentating is exceptionally good and entertaining. When Sean Kelly goes on break, you get the other guy.
Cool how they do that. Like they shuffle. I think Rob Hatch is the anchor for that.
Yeah.
They get Robbie McEwen in there as well, and Adam
Yep.
Blythe, and so they rotate
Right.
the commentators through and get that different perspective. And they have a great post game as well. Like they
Yeah.
do a great post event talk about it, break it down. The guys are knowledgeable and
They really are.
they're fun to listen to.
Yeah,
And the
they got
accents
Jens
aren't so
Voigt.
bad.
uh,
Yeah.
They got Jens out on the course, some of the time. So that's good. It's good coverage.
Yeah.
All right. So anybody have a what went wrong?
I mean, I got the what went wrong is UAE so far the crashiest team of 2026. I mean, it seems like, for lack of a better term, I mean, all the way back to the Alula tour, right? Back then, I mean, they've been crashing. They had that terrible crashes in Paris-Nice, taking riders out, and then in the Giro, it's like, what's going on? And especially, I mean, you touched on these time trial tires, but what's going on with these wet weather setups? And yes, we were talking about it too. And is it also the bikes? The bikes are so stiff, and the equipment
Yeah.
and these weird, the handlebars. Everything's aero this and stiff that, and da 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 da. And then like, right, not everybody's Nils Pollitt size with a huge bike that probably is a little bit compliant, but these small bikes, what's going on? What's going on, especially with UAE? I mean, they lose all their GC riders in a single crash on stage two, and then they go and win two stages back to back. So
Yeah.
Well, I think the defender of technology and design on here. I try not to be anti-progression, but I think that bike is stiff, far forward, and they're running short cranks, and they're on TT tires in the rain. And then all these teams are running these, Gore-Tex rubbery rain jackets that they can't get on and off.
Dude, that.
So yeah, you see a leader have two riders pulling to help the leader get a jacket off is like,
Yeah.
there's probably some room for improvement with those jackets. Somehow be able to get them on and off when they're wet. I'm always thinking about how you can load everyone on an airplane faster, like make it split in half and an escalator that comes up the middle of the airplane and the airplane closes. So like, can you make a rain jacket that like Jonas when he had the tights on over the top, like something that just makes it split in the middle or something? I don't know. There's marginal gains there.
Superman, like the old tearaway jerseys they used to have in college football. They
well, it
grab
seems
them and
like maybe
tear.
just like a zipper versus say a Velcro on, because the problem always seems like it's at the cuff, right? Like
Yeah.
they get these things off and then it's stuck on their hands. I mean, I think it was
Yeah, zipper
Sylvan
down the inside of
Chavanel
the
when
sleeve.
at
That would
Get
actually
Well
work.
and he would like had his jersey, he couldn't get it off and had someone in the car. But yeah, I think the clothing manufacturers could figure out how to get the cuffs to still be Aero because everything's Aero and not
Well,
yeah, like
especially when I mean, for the most part, from what we've seen, they don't race those jackets in the finale unless it's like unbelievably cold. So you got to take that off for the finale. I started laughing and I go, well, is the amount of energy you're saving on it being so airily tight, do you lose by sitting there waffling around off the back with your teammates helping you pull it on? Then you got to sprint and catch back up. I would think that's a net loss. But the jackets do look
Yes.
good when they're on.
Speaking of conserving energy, there's been a lot of talk about Visma is riding the back. So the back is the new front. So in the sprint stages, they're intentionally riding the back
Huh.
to save energy
I mean, like all the
for Jonas.
supporters that aren't necessarily worried about if they lose 10 seconds on the run-in or something.
Yeah, they did. They're not competing. It's only a sprint stage strategy, and there's
Right.
been a couple of days where everyone expected it to happen, and then all of a sudden it didn't. But they had a meeting. They've done the analytics, and the back is the new front for them, and they're hoping to sell this concept to other teams in the Tour de France so that the sprinting teams can have the front and I don't know. We'll see how that goes, but there's
Well,
definitely press conferences and discussion of it, where they're answering the question. And then Victor Campenarts has gone on his little video and talked about it. So I'm not inventing this concept. They've outspokenly said the back is the new front for them.
well, they would be able to look at the power files and figure it out. I mean, aside from safety, if you're looking at average watts and, just like we talked about rotating riders through and saving them for their best day, like if you're not going to be up there, how many people can you line up for one GC team to protect your leader, right? You can't put all 8 guys at the front of a sprint stage, especially if you're not a sprint team like designed for that. So you get 3 or 4 guys up there, hopefully somebody that's close to the same size as Jonas. So if he needs to switch a bike, he's got somebody right there. And then, yeah, you let the other guys surf the back. That's kind of an interesting theory. I wonder if they're only using power files. I wonder if that'd probably be mostly what they would use to discern
Well,
that.
they claim they're looking at crash data also, and that they're
Mm,
analyzing risk. They
right,
also did mention that in the opening week, it does mean their car is car 21 because the ranking of the cars in the peloton for a quick wheel change is based on GC, so that they
right,
might not be great on GC, but then they have a plan for swapping between teammates if an incident goes on. I don't
right.
know. It's the great debate, right?
I think it's good that there's a debate going on. Everybody's, you're looking to find a new pocket, right? Find some opportunity and exploit that in the early part. It's interesting that they're trying to get other people involved, other teams involved to kind of ride that out. So, which seems like if it was such a great advantage, you wouldn't want other people to ride it out, but maybe, to come on board, give away your edge, but maybe they're figuring if they get more teams back there, then it will be an easier, you know, easier up front or safer, I should say.
Maybe they'll just
Yeah.
petition to the Grand Tours that there's sprint stages and only the sprint teams race those, and then on the GC stages, only the GC stages. It's like you got to do what you got to do. You got to race. I
Yeah,
mean,
you got to make it through the end. I mean,
it,
I like the
yeah,
3K rule and stuff, you know.
yeah.
Don't you remember when I don't know how many years ago it started, six, seven, eight maybe, where the GC teams started lighting up towards the end of the stages just to keep their leader out of trouble, and all the sprint teams were complaining. They're like, dude, what are you doing up here? You're messing up the sprint train. And I'm thinking to myself, whoever can ride fastest
Yeah.
gets it.
Right.
Complaining about that,
Yeah.
which I understand, why the sprinters are, objecting, but it's just kind of funny, that they would do that.
So
Like,
Matt White,
Hmm.
Matt White is the new director sportif for, help me with the Spanish team that Valverde rode for. I'm sorry, I'm drawing blank.
Movistar.
Movistar.
Movistar. So
Mhm.
now you see Movistar riding more aggressively and probably, to be honest, more intelligently.
Right.
And then you see Red Bull doing interesting things today where they were chasing down the break, got it down to 2 minutes before the climb. So I don't know. I think analytics are involved. I think, new, fresh director sportifs, changes in the style of racing. It's all real fun, little idiosyncrasies that are fun to watch
Yeah.
um, and keep an eye on.
Well, I mean, and think about just like something about like the fueling we were talking about, that high carb fueling, how much it rewrites your playbook when you're a director and you're sitting in the car. The distances that used to say, hey, you can go this hard for this long, or attack from this far out, or you should be good. Now you're having to change those as performances increase. I think that's a pretty exciting part of it, and then again, in those pockets, people exploit a little bit, just like Tade was on short cranks, a whole season he had on people. You find a pocket at that level, the competition is so tight. I mean, you're looking for percentages of percentages, and adding them all up to get your gains. So it's just, it's exciting. It's fun to watch.
I want to go
And
back to what we were talking about with all this, the bike handling and the bikes and this, and I've got a couple of images to show. What do you think, DS?
Yeah,
So
let's
here's the
do that. This is what
so
I was talking about. They're claiming, I was looking up to see what quote unquote length stem Jonas had on his bike, and it said a 120. Now that's obviously not his bike because that's a tall
no,
head tube. But then I also was wondering if it's a little bit of a visual, because you can see how like the head tube, it's not a traditional fork setup, right? Where the steer just goes through the frame. It's got like the pivot there where the fork pivots around the front of it. So I think that's maybe part of the visual why it looks longer. But even still, if you could imagine a stem coming up and then kicking out,
tell the
that seems
listeners
long.
what you're looking at.
We're looking at the thanks. We're looking at the Visma race bike, and Cervelo has this proprietary bar that comes out, and the stem kind of splits in two like a Y, much like the old Specialized stump jumper technology, which is kind of funny.
the
But I
bull
just thought
moose.
of that the triangle, going out to that center part of the bar.
Yeah.
And so there's not really a traditional stem. Yeah, now there's a UAE, which is even more interesting because they don't have any triangulation across it. They just got two pontoons out there floating. I mean, it looks, if you like the look of it, it looks sexy. But I just wonder how much flex there is in that, especially when they're not triangulated. I mean, you got one long piece going out of each side, and so for people, the Cervelo bar goes out, but kind of is a triangle as it hits what would be like the top of the bar. But the UAE one, as you can see, it's just two separate pods going out. They're like praying mantis pods or
But it
something.
is all one piece, right?
It is all correct. It's
Yeah.
all one piece. But if you think about the Visma bar, it has basically a crossbar in
Right.
between it that UAE doesn't have. I mean, that's got to add a ton to the rigidity. But then again, is that too rigid? I don't know. It depends on what size. If that's not a traditional inch and a half, inch and an eighth, steer tube, is it give more flex and more compliance so you don't need it out of the bar? Like, it would be interesting to know how much was going on inside of there in
I
terms of
mean,
flex and feel.
or lack of flex and feel. I mean, it just seems like
Yeah.
there's so much going on with these bikes. I mean, these are two extreme examples, but it's the two probably biggest teams around. I mean, every team is riding some form of a one-piece bar stem. Some
Right.
of them look more traditional than others. Um, but we've talked about, bike compliance and these big cross sections of tubes and the
Yeah.
super deep wheels and the light riders and all of these things. And then the farther forward positions, all of them, potentially contributing to these high numbers of crashes. It seems like we've seen more crashes this year, especially on the bigger teams. It used to be the big teams would complain, "Oh, you can't let these lower division teams in. The riders aren't as good. There are going to be more
Right.
crashes." Well, guess who's crashing? The biggest teams are crashing.
Right.
So
Right at
why
the
is
front.
that? Yeah, and I mean it's not handlebar width, and it's not 10 cogs, and it's not maybe a little bit on wheel depth, but
The overall package, the
yeah.
compliance of the overall, of the overall package. Now, the Cervelo bars, I'm pretty sure that the top of the bar lays on that Y and there's bolts from underneath and you can like adjust the angle of the bars. I don't know if this is that model. It's
This
hard to
this
see
is
from the
not that
photo if
one.
this is, oh no, that is, you're right. That's all completely one
That's all a
piece.
one
Maybe
piece. Yeah,
they
there's another one.
figured out the angle of the dangle that everybody liked and
Yeah. Well, I'll take that off, and I think I'll see if I can find that other one. I was searching through these things here. There's so much stuff up there, and then you're like, well, is it real or is it AI? You
yeah,
know?
so I still think that the riders got to look at it. I'd be amazed. I mean, like if you look at other motorsports that are on pavement, I mean, everybody's got wet weather setups. They probably don't, maybe if you're going slower, they would adjust their suspension a little bit differently. There's no suspension obviously on a road bike, but in terms of tires, there's always wet weather tires that people have. I understand. I would think that maybe that would just be a development product for a tire company to make a wet weather race tire that still rolled fast, but maybe had better channeling on the sides to get the water out and give you some more grip. If you're listening, Conti product developers.
Well, I mean, it's not that fast when you're picking yourself up off the ground. Now, is it? I think there's a,
Yeah,
there's a there's a balance, and I mean, the teams are always going to push these limits, push it to the very end. You would hope it gets done in testing rather than in the biggest races in the world, but I don't know. We don't hear about the testing, right? Because it's testing unless you're out there. There's
yeah,
not a test track. I mean, I guess you with motos, DS, right? You would go to the test track. There would be suspension days. There would be tire days,
right.
right? And the testing was huge. The setup was huge. I think maybe cycling could learn from motorsports a bit more on this testing side of things.
Well, I was wondering that if the teams ever, I mean, obviously you'd have to be at training camp where it rains, or you'd set up and be like, hey, let's go out and throw two pairs of tights on and some hip pads, some elbow pads, and go out and ride the wet setup and try it out. I mean, adjust pressures, do everything. I'm just still kind of amazed that they wouldn't have like a wet weather setup if they knew it was going to be really rainy like that with lots of descents because, I mean, the handling, it's not just the time you lose, right? Crashing and getting up. The UAE rider, I'll blink his name again. Izara? No.
Right.
Arietta, there you go, won the stage, but you're also just risking getting hurt. Right now, he's got open wounds. You don't know if those get infected and all of the risk that comes along with it. So I still think that, I still think the main culprit, like the tires are interesting, but I think the main culprit, along with less feel, as far as these specific type of crashes where they're just going through and lose the front end, I feel that that has a lot to do with just the rider bias, how much further forward the weight is, because that's kind of usually if your weight's back, you're not so heavy on the front end. Even on a road bike, that's sketchy, but it has a little bit of room to move. If you feel things kind of go, you can adjust. But when you're so far over the front, if it goes, your weight's usually so far forward that you're just, it's a quick ticket to the ground.
I've noticed it seems like a lot more crashes are the riders losing the front end of the bike than the rear end of the bike.
Yes,
It seems like
correct.
that's way more prevalent now than it has been. I mean, if you do watch that stage five of today's Giro, when Arietta, after he hits the caution tape and gets back on, and he's in this huge gear rolling up over the overpass, and he puts so much power in the pedals, his rear end kicks out, but he saves it, right? He he kicked it out, and he was smart enough. He let the pressure off the pedals, or maybe he got lucky in the tire, whatever was slick, it got out of the slickness, whether it was a little patch of, some oil, or it was a paint slick. But that happens at the front end. It doesn't generally come back like that. So it is,
Right.
and I do believe too that it is that far forward. I mean, if you get some shots of the guy who's in pink now, there were some shots of him when he was, time trialing, trying to stay away to win that stage, some good side shots. And I was dumbfounded. Like, he's so far forward. It reminded me of when the triathlon positions all moved far forward so they could keep that hip angle open so their legs were better for running. I was like, it was crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy to see. I mean, I guess it's crazy from what we're used to seeing. But to your point, like the bike geometries, and you've touched on this before, DS, the bike geometries haven't seemed to be adjusted for these new positions.
Kept up.
So all the weight is still so far forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Factor is one of the few designs that have kind of tried to address that position and try and get the rider weight centered back in between the wheels as opposed to so far up over the front wheel, which is where the problems, usually come. But we'll see. I think this is going to be something that's going to expand in the future. Looking at, I mean, you're looking at all different, you're looking at all different ways to perform. Even if it's a rider on your team is crashing and they're subpar for the rest of the race, or even for 3 or 4 days, that can make a difference. Yeah.
Well, one thing we got to keep in mind is the UCI has this rule where products have to be on the market at a certain point. So we always got to remember that, like, when they're testing, developing stuff, I do believe that's also true of tires, right? It needs to be available to the consumer within a certain period of time.
Right. Certain amount of time. So but you always get a test period.
Yeah. Why? There didn't seem to be so many crashes before in the rain. Like, you had a set of Vittoria, CXCG. Maybe it rained, so you let your pressure out a little bit. Maybe you rubbed a little vinegar right on the rubber to make the rubber a little bit more sticky. But I mean, I remember crashing in the rain, every once in a while, but it just seems like there are just so many more crashes regardless. Like, something has changed to cause
They're
more
out
crashes.
over the front wheel.
They're out over the front wheel. Well, and a lot of riders come up through, indoor cycling. They're not doing the group rides, from being young too. I mean, I still believe the biggest factor are the riders themselves, but it seems like the riders that are a bit more experienced, or we've talked about a rider like Wout van Aert or Mathieu van der Poel that rides cyclocross. I mean, we talked about cross quite a bit in one of our episodes and how that helped with bike handling. I think it's not any one thing, but it's like this convergence of the bikes, the tech, the weight, the compliance, and then, the biggest factor is the rider, because without a rider on the bike, they're not going to crash. So how do the riders get better as well?
Yeah.
So there was an interview with Pascal Ackerman, who's on Jayco Alula, and he was the first rider I heard say that he thought the gearing, he's a sprinter, I believe. He thought the gearing was causing problems. I'm like, ooh, that's the first time I've heard a rider.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Like the speed, in other words.
He says it's just really, really fast, and that the roads are slightly more full of furniture and narrower or wider. In some cases they're on wider roads because, our roads as a society has gotten wider. So he says sometimes the roads are wider and narrower, and the speeds are higher. And I'm pretty sure it was him. I need to double check, but he's German sprinter on Jayco, and I believe it was him, and he spoke up about it. I was like, wow, I hadn't heard that. So
yeah, interesting.
Gear limits, just like when we were juniors.
Yep.
So then do we limit the light gears that they can use for mountain stages as well? I mean, where does it stop? Are you allowed to use gravel gearing on road races?
I could see the top gearing, but then again, could you pedal that fast even if you had a 10 cog, if you didn't have deep wheels and an aero bike? Probably not. Couldn't get it going that fast. So then maybe it's just the bikes are still the problem.
Well, I think in fairness, he does also talk about all the riders being better now. He says that everyone's fitter, the bikes are faster in general. It
Yeah,
wasn't just him completely on the gears, but he did specifically talk about the gears. So
yeah, one of the
Plus, they're
first ones
fueling.
to do it.
They're eating more carbs too. I mean, they're on race fuel. It's everything. I guess it's
Yeah,
progress, and the unfortunate part is that riders are getting hurt, and that's
that is the
if it
bummer.
was right, if it was just like we're getting a bunch of flat tires, oh well, we'll fix the tires, but it comes down to the human side of it. And we were talking about it's the bike handling, but also the riders. If something else was happening and the riders weren't getting hurt, it wouldn't be such a big deal. So we gotta
Right.
keep them safe. There's some smart people out there. We're gonna figure this out.
So,
Yes.
blinded by science, we've been talking about science for the last 20 minutes, but DS, you want to talk a little bit about tire testing?
Yeah, it was.
Say,
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I thought it would be something as we listen to, we talk tires and speed and gravel and also like bigger gravel. So I've been running through and testing. I thought it might be interesting for people, and really just for me, with Continental updating their cross country tires and the Race King, which turned into the Dubnatal, which we've talked about. I thought it was a great opportunity to test the old and the new back to back because it's not like they, threw the baby out with bathwater and designed a whole new tire. It was really just some subtle changes. And then as a tire designer and tester, I'm always curious, you look at it and then try not to have any preconceived notions of what you think it might do better because then it's easy to like say, oh yeah, it is doing that better. But it's interesting in looking at the two tires. I found differences between the two. Yeah. So it was just kind of interesting. The new one, the Dubnatal, they made it basically. The Race King had a little more round feel to it. It was a little bit looser tire, and this one side knob, the way that they space it. On the new tire, they changed it a little bit and opened up the side knobs, and that was what I could feel. But what I thought was interesting is the increase in handling on the Dubnatal compared to the Race King. I noticed more on drier, slippery, which would be more like DGer conditions you get down where you are, Ed, with like that hard base and a little bit of loose on top. I felt like the Dubnatal, which has a few more sipes and the changes to the tread, that it could really dig in and I could feel the difference more. Whereas today, where I went out behind Summerland, the dirt is, like that shaly dirt and has more moisture in it. And I found that when the dirt was deep, which, would have a little bit better traction too, that I didn't notice that as much. I noticed that the tires handled closer to the same in softer dirt as opposed to harder dirt. So it was kind of interesting to feel those areas. And the original Race King, has a couple wallowy points when you lean in and initiate your turn until you get to the outside knob where you kind of know it's loose and you're holding on through the loose period until the traction gets out to the knobs. But on the Dubnatal, it definitely doesn't feel loose like that. It feels more connected. And I was focusing more on rolling, handling today than I should say rolling speed, although, you can feel a little bit more rolling faster, but I just kept the same rear on, which was a Race King 50 mil, and just was switching in between the Race King and the Dubnatal front in the 2.2.
what is siping?
Siping are like those teeny little slits in the top of the tire. Siping was originally, a lot of it was brought around in wet weather. It's an easy way if you have like a knob or tread pan, there's just like a thin cut in it when it's rolling and not really asked to handle things. It can kind of stay closed, but when the knob or the part of the tread gets loaded up, the sipe just gives you that little extra edge. They help in the rain and in that like fine condition, like powdery dirt. Yeah, so it's interesting. So I have a little bit more that I want to throw in there. I got a 2.2 Trinitol, which is their next one up, which I think will be a little bit chunky for my gravel bike, but it'll be interesting, to test those out. And then I'm going to roll those back around against the Thunderbird also. So I'm like partway through my comparison. But it's a great tire, whichever one you can get your hands on. If you're looking in that size range, anywhere like 2.0, 2.1, 2.2, the Race King or the Dubnatals, it's a good, great all around kind of fast, gravel tire.
Have you tested the 2.0 Dubnitol that came out at Sea Otter?
I have not tested the 2.0 Dubnitol yet. Yeah. I mean, for my testing purposes, I know that whatever it's doing in the 2.2, the differences between the two are going to be the same in the 2.0, what I'm
Mm.
feeling. So didn't really worry about going out and ordering a 50 mil dub from QBP, although I saw that they had them in there. But I was already kind of far down. So I'm just focusing on, focusing on the front, focusing on the front and feeling it. Yeah.
It's interesting listening you talk about that and the testing and the handling because it seems like most of the chatter, all people are talking about is just a bigger tire. and
Right.
and and watt savings, but nothing about handling or nothing about the conditions. And it seems to me that the knobby patterns, right, the type of tire and the type of rider you are so much more important. It's like, oh yeah, this tire it rolls so fast because blah blah blah. I can save 14 watts and this and that. But it's like, but if you're going through a corner and it's sketching you out, how much time are you really saving? I
Right.
think that whole part is like missed on people. Like you need a tire for your style of riding and for the conditions you ride in, right? Like the tires that I
Correct.
ride around here in Nevada City, right? I go down to Carpentry and ride with you, and it's a different tire, but I'm
Right.
used to that tire, so I know what it's going to do.
Yeah.
I think that predictability in a tire is much more or equally as important as quote how fast it is, because like I said, how fast is it when you're picking yourself up off the ground?
It's nice not to, you want to know what your tires are going to do. That allows you,
Exactly.
same thing with a bike setup. You want to know what it's going to do. No surprises. When you're waiting for the big surprise to come, that's not a way you're going to go on the offensive and shred that. You're going to be a little bit tentative.
Well, that's a great
Yeah.
point because it did look like some of the riders today in that Giro stage were like not sure what was going to happen
Yeah.
around the corner. Like they were waiting for the big surprise. You don't want surprises. That's what testing's for, to
Right.
figure out where those are and get rid of them or know how to deal with them so they're not surprises.
Yeah, size up and maybe have a wet weather tire that has a little bit of siping. I think you'd have a hard time doing any hand siping on a road tire. I think you'd flat 50 of them trying to sipe one because the tread's so thin. Like we would cut mountain bike tires, excuse me, downhill tires especially, but it's got a thick casing and a lot of knob on there. So you have a little bit of oversight. I don't think you could sipe a road tire. I think that would be perilous work to try and to try and proto something.
Well, I just had the thought that maybe the mechanics are changing up equipment too much so that the riders are not always used to whatever the daily
Yeah.
setup is. Like in the old days, they just rode one tire, rain or shine, except for Paris-Roubaix, maybe.
Yeah. That is a big part of it. I know from all my years, in motorcycle racing and being around and testing. I mean, that is a huge part of it. As riders will say, out the track, I might change something and test it. And yeah, I could go faster for one lap, but the predictability of it, you need to be able to go fast for whatever it is, 20 laps or 35 minutes. And at the end of it all, for those guys, knowing what your bike's going to do, even if the setup might not be the very best on every single day, it's kind of like you have your setup of averages. You know that this is your base and your setup that you can pretty much go ride pretty dang fast everywhere. And where you're going to make up for it is you're never wondering what your bike's going to do, especially that sport. You hit stuff and you get kicked sideways. You want to know, that even if you get kicked, how far out it's going and you can bring it back in. It's the big surprises that you don't want. So it really is a setup, principle across platforms, whether it be, bikes or motorcycles. And Ricky Carmichael, who's the goat of off-road racing, the most wins. I was fortunate enough that when I was training Ivan his first year, both years on 450s, but his first year, Ricky was still racing full time. And he had a bit of an interesting setup, but they would just have test days and out there the whole day. I mean, from 8 to 5. And at the end of the day, it's like, let me put on my original, this feels good. They're working with you. Let me put on my original, set it and just test it. She comes back, yeah, we're putting this on for the race. He never changed the whole year. It would drive the technicians crazy. They're out there just testing. Now, granted, you get data that you can use for other riders and stuff like that, but literally, I mean, testing all day. Let me just put on the other one to confirm the new one's better. Put on the old, nope, sticking with the old one. We're going racing with it.
And then
that was it. Then he would go and win. Yeah,
and then
he would
win.
He would ride a bike so loose, and by loose, like, not stuck, like just unbelievable. Southwick, which is a sand track, I just remember watching him, and I had like the Gucci, credential, so I could walk around right on the track and just be standing and seeing. And I was just like mind blown. He really, at that speed, even because I had been racing downhill and, riding dirt bikes, and then to see like what happens to a bike at that speed, I was just like, wow, it was amazing. But yeah, he always knew what his setup was going to do. And funny enough, I can remember too, when we were downhilling, if you remember when like Palmer came in, in the 90s, and then Randy Lawrence came in, and that was right at when you were, still racing. KS, you had a few more years, but I remember Randy, because he was McGrath's mechanic when McGrath was at Chaparral Yamaha and won like 3 championships. And so, of course, I would always geek out and ask him moto questions. And I was talking to him about tires one time, and he goes, Jeremy ran the same front tire at every race. Now, granted, obviously, like Supercross, even though you might get a mud race in an open stadium, you don't have the diversity of conditions that you would say in like downhill mountain biking. So it kind of like was blowing my mind that he would just run the same front tire. He's like, dude, he would change rears a lot depending on the dirt and the traction and what they needed to get. Sorry about that. But he said he would change his rear, and he said the rears they had by the end of the main event, the knobs would be peeling off. They had like special rubber and stuff. He goes, but always the same front. And I'm like, why wouldn't he change the front? He's like, dude, he goes, you don't ever want to wonder what your front tire is going to do. And I was like, and that was it, right? You limit your factors. You always know what your front tire is going to do, how it's going to stick everything, switch the rear around, and go racing.
Well, I think we've got a theme for the day. It's more carbs, and you always want to know what your front tire is going to do.
Yes.
But as we wrap up, let's finish it with a positive Pete. KS, you got one?
I have a positive Pete from La Vuelta Femenina. I think it's either stage 4 or stage 5. I got a little video queued up for us. And Lotte Kopecky in the red jersey, perfect stage for her. And she's got her lead out rider, who is Misha Bredewald. And let me do this. I remember this from last time. We'll share the audio. So this is a little video here of this sprint finish.
And Franzi Koch went left.
So Bredewald's here leading her out.
That opened up the sprint for Lotte Kopecky. And with the rise up towards the line, it was
perfect
the
lead
Dutch
out
rider that hit the front. Kopecky came off the wheel, but in a very cool, calm, and collected sprint, Misha Bredewald took the victory ahead of Kopecky with Paternoster.
Dude.
So, and
our first
they'll show
Dutch
it again
winner of this year's Vuelta. Unheard of in previous editions. They won all of the stages last year, but Misha Bredewald gets her first win of the season.
So here it is in
and her
slow-mo.
20th as a professional. Great finish. Kasia Niewiadoma in the white jersey, the Polish champion, also getting into the mix, as was Shari Bossart, already a stage winner in this race. Lotte Kopecky would extend her lead in the red jersey and also take over in green.
Yeah. So what was cool about that is I listened to the interview. They planned that. So they actually planned. Bredewald said she had some ambitions to sprint, and so they talked about this exact scenario where she did the lead out and then Kopecky actually eased up. So when I was watching this thing at full speed, it's like you actually see Kopecky look over and sees that nobody's coming around her, because she easily could have won that and won another stage and won in the red jersey.
Right.
But it was a little bit of payback for someone who's always helping you out. Just like Jonas gave Sepp and his family a trip to Greece, right?
That's right.
Like,
Build that gratitude, get some extra suffering out of
gratitude,
it.
and so that's my positive Pete right there. Goes to Lotta Kopecky for
That is a
not
great
being
one.
greedy, not being Gordon Gecko, and letting her teammate get her due. So that's
Yeah.
it.
All right.
Yeah.
That
Nice.
sounds good.
Yes, you got one?
I do have a positive Pete, and but I think I'll have to tell the whole story of this OCR maybe on the next pod as we're running long. But I crewed for Jonah in this event, and I'll just say briefly what it is. It was this fireman's challenge that was started, and OCR stands for off-road course, whatever, obstacle course road, something like that. Sorry for maybe if I have it backwards, but essentially they start up at Refugio Beach, which is up the coast of Santa Barbara, and they paddle 9 miles open water on like a knee paddleboard down to Haskell's, which is like at Winchester, exchange there, put on running shoes, run 6 miles along the beach to Arroyo Burro, which is Hendry's Beach there. We're at the bottom of Hope Ranch.
Cutting out for
And
you.
then from there, they run
Yeah, you
straight up
froze.
Las Positas Road. It's just
It's
pavement
gonna have
all
to
the way
save till
up.
next episode.
Just in,
Oh, there it is.
You totally froze that
oh,
entire
you
time.
you guys were frozen up too, but I think it will all be recorded. But I'll say it for you
We'll
again.
see.
So they paddle from Refugio, 9 miles in open water down to Haskell's, and then they run 6 miles on the beach on the sand, and then straight up 4,000 feet, 3975 from sea level, all the way straight up Las Positas, which is brutal. It's just pavement once you get across State Street and up towards Foothill, across another aid station at the water treatment center by the bottom of Hesesita. Then they got to run up Hesesita, which then goes down, and then run up tunnel, get all the way to the top of Camino Cielo, go up to La Cumbre Peak, and then get on a mountain bike. That's 24-mile run, and then 38 miles out east and west Camino, and bomb back down Refugio Canyon and get to the bottom. It took Jonah 13 and a half hours, I think, to do it solo. And there were team events too. But the cool thing about it is it's not there's no prize money, there's no anything. It's only bragging rights amongst your buddies. It's like a real bootleg event. And there's people doing timing, and the timing strip line at La Cumbre Peak is like dirt poured across the road. Hey, that's the line right there. But the cool thing is all the people crewing, because I was crewing for Jonah, 4 aid stations, and there are other people there. And the people that were doing most of the crewing and stuff, it wasn't like what you would typically see if you go to a race, right? Oh, there's soigneurs feeding and stuff like that. People are throwing blankets out, and their athletes are coming in and sitting there and eating different food, and doing it. But it was the vibe of it. Everybody out there was just so stoked to be involved in doing it and supporting the people and out there, and people are helping other people out. And I'm asking people, I had extra ice. You need any right ice for your athletes or anything? It was just it was a good vibe, and you would have to be in order to complete that whole thing. Now there's also a relay division, which was definitely easier pill than pulling than doing the whole thing. But Jonah, I mean, I got to give it up to that guy. He told me, he's like, dude, once I got to the base, once he got to the water treatment station, then it was only like Hesesita and tunnel, everything, and then mountain bikes. Like, dude, so once I got there, he's like, I'm in my territory. He's like, from here on out, he's like, I got this, and he's like, I'm going to be cracking eggs. I'm like, cracking eggs. Oh, every person I pass is an egg I crack. So he got up the top. He's like, cracked 5 eggs going up, going up tunnel. Cracked another 5. He told me at the end, going out. But so it was just what an event, and it was really fun to be involved in something like that nobody had a number on, literally like no numbers. You're out there, everybody knows who you are. There's a list, but everybody was just coming together and helping out for some burly tests of physical strength.
They do this annually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I crewed for Jonah 2 years ago. That's been going on for 35 years. So they've been doing it. Like Jim White did I remember him doing like the bike portion back in the day. He would do the relay event, but dude, with all that running, doing the full that's just like so much. And I'll tell one funny part. So we're in the first aid station at Haskell's, right? And he does his paddle. And so we gotta run up the beach. And it was fun, he's able to leave his board there and we got to run up to where my van is. And at that moment, when I saw Joni coming out, I realized, I wonder if I can keep up with him, cause I don't run that much, but he was pretty cold and stuff. So we ran up there and he's getting changed and doing it, and cleaning his feet off and doing all the stuff. And we have a full list. Like, I need to drink 2 bottles of full electrolyte and take another one with me. We have all his food list. And he's like sitting there and he's eating some food, gels the first off. And he's like chugging down these big gulps of electrolyte. And he's like, his hands are kind of shaking and stuff. And I got the side of my van open and it's all set up. And he's like doing it. He's like, oh, and he just goes, boom, and just spits a mouthful of electrolyte. If you stood and looked in my van, there was not a surface facing that did not have his spit electrolyte on it. and then he's all, and he's trying to say, I'm sorry, but he's not turning around. So as he's trying to say, I'm sorry, he's still spitting more electrolyte out. And I start laughing, well, bro, turn around. And he's like, oh, sorry. And then he's, of course, like trying to get a rag and clean it. I'm like, dude, I knew the risk when I signed up. It's okay. I got this. I got water and a rag. So anyway, but that was pretty funny. But yeah, dude, seeing him just trying to and pot pasta with chicken, he's trying to like stuff in his face and eat. It was pretty awesome. So
more carbs.
So positive. Yeah, that's it. More carbs. Positive Pete to all those people out there. That was really cool. I'm back. I told Joan, anytime you ask, I'm there. I'm the crew meister.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, that concludes episode 32 of the service course report. Please pass it along to your friends. Tell us about your carbs. Tell us about your front tire. We want to hear from you. And thanks for listening. If you made it this far.
Yeah.